science doesn't stand still. We forget that it's moving at this exponential speed. For every year that you're alive, science is extending your life for about a quarter to a third of a year. But there's going to be a point that for every year that you're alive, science is extending your life for more than a year. I can't explain how exciting it is to have this capacity and capability coming our way.
It's a serial entrepreneur and ex-Price founder.
He's trying to transform what it is to live in this world and in the future.
Peter Diamandis.
We're being just inundated by negative news. Their business model is to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers, and we pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news.
Wow.
And so you have to actively shape what you allow into your mind in the same way that you shape what you let into your body, what you eat. Mindset is one of the most powerful forces in you living a healthy, long life. One thing I want everyone to take away from this conversation today is here are a number of things you can do effectively for free. There's one other part, which is the part I'm most excited about.
Tell me.
Okay.
Hey everyone, Lewis Howes here, and thanks for being here on this special interview with Peter Diamandis. We're talking about longevity. And there's one thing that he shares in here that really blew my mind. You hear things about sleep and exercise and diet and all these different things on how to maximize your health and living longer. But there's one thing that Peter dives into around the middle of this interview that no one else is talking about. None of these scientists are really talking about, and it's about your belief in your ability to live longer. We break this down throughout this entire interview. Leave a comment below and click the like button if you're enjoying this episode, and make sure to subscribe on YouTube as well, because we have some incredible guests coming in the near weeks, and I don't want you to miss any of this content. Welcome back, everyone, at the School of Greatness. Very excited about our guest. We have the inspiring Peter Diamandis in the house. Good to see you, my friend.
Good to see you, brother.
Very excited. You've written a new book called The Longevity Guidebook, How to Slow, Stop, and Reverse Aging and Not Die from Something Stupid. And that part at the end is one of the most important things as I continue my journey of trying to compete in sports at a high level. The biggest thing is preventing injury.
Yes.
Because in order to play the game at a high level, you need to be healthy. And I think that's related to life as well. If in order to play the game of life at a high level, we need to stay healthy. There's a few things in your book that have really stood out to me that I got to dive into, and I'm sure we'll talk about many other things. But I think a lot of people, as they age, their body's shut down. So it's like when they're in their 70s, 80s, and 90s, they don't have the energy or the capacity to live a rich and full life. And what do you think are the main factors today that are causing people to live longer but not have the vitality to enjoy their length of their life?
My goal for anybody watching us here is that they walk away with immediately useful things they can do to maintain that vitality and energy, and that they are motivated more than ever before to take care of themselves, because something amazing is coming down the pike in terms of science right now. And so I wanted to lay that out bare. My mission in writing this book is to get the knowledge out there. You know, Tony Robbins and I wrote a book, 700 pages, that was an extraordinary book. It was #1 in the New York Times for, I think, like 6 weeks. But it's hard for people to consume a 700-page book. And I've made this Longevity Guidebook as something that is consumable, and it's a manual, it's a how-to. It's like, okay, I gotta remind myself on sleep or diet or exercise or mindset. And I've laid it out in that way, where it's something you pick up and utilize. It's, you know, what's different today, right? So I think that we're living in a time where AI is gonna make a massive difference, and a whole slew of biotechnology capabilities like single-cell sequencing, CRISPR, gene therapies, all these exotic things you hear about are technologies that are going to become available to us in a decade ahead. One of my mentors and dear friends, Ray Kurzweil, right, who wrote The Singularity is Near, Singularity is Nearer, he proposed a concept years ago called longevity escape velocity.
What's that?
And so longevity escape velocity is the idea that today, for every year that you're alive, science is extending your life for about a quarter to a third of a year. But there's going to be a point that for every year that you're alive, science is extending your life for more than a year. And the question is, when is that going to happen? And so Ray's prediction, and if you Google Ray's predictions, it's like he's got an 86% accuracy rate, which is pretty extraordinary.
On all of his predictions.
On all of his predictions,
Really?
like when we're going to have AI, when we're going to have, these robots, when we're going to have nanotechnology. His prediction on longevity escape velocity is by the end of the year 2030.
That's when we're supposed to reach this.
That if you're in reasonably good shape and you have reasonable affluence, not like rich, reasonable abilities, that you'll reach this longevity escape velocity. So I speak to all the scientists I know about this, and folks like George Church and David Sinclair at Harvard Medical School, when I query them about this, their answer is by the mid-2030s. So, but here's the point, right? It's not, it's not 50 years from now or 30 years from now. It's a decade. It's the next 15 years. So our job between now and then is to keep ourselves in reasonably good health, and we'll talk about that, and not die from something stupid.
Yes. I mean, what are the main factors that are causing us to die younger? It seems like I saw a stat or a study that the current life expectancy in the US in 2024 is 79.25 years.
Yeah.
And that's a 0.18 increase from 2023 from macro trends.
And we had dipped during COVID.
We dipped,
obviously,
yep.
And now we're coming back up.
But it's not that much still.
It isn't. It isn't. And it's measuring everybody versus people who are focused on taking care of themselves, right? One of the biggest issues is we're killing ourselves by what we eat. I mean, we can dive into diet. It's, the number one thing is people's overconsumption of sugar.
Yes.
The human body never evolved to eat as much sugar as we do. It was not something that was plentiful. You have to remember, our biology evolved 100,000, 200,000 years ago in the savannas of Africa. And we haven't changed our biology over the last 200,000 years. And so you have to remember, what was life like back then? Well, we were hunters and foragers. We fasted because we didn't have access to food. We didn't have sugar. We had some fruit in our diet. But today, we're eating like 100 kilograms of sugar a year. And 100 years ago, it was like 2 kilograms a year. And before that, it was even less than that, refined sugar. And it is a cardiovascular inflammatory. It's a neurocognitive inflammatory. And it is dangerous for our health. Now, I'm not saying don't eat any sugar, but it's like just starting with donuts. And I had this argument with Elon all the time. It's like he jokes, I eat donuts every morning. I said, don't eat donuts. When you're 60, you're going to regret that.
If someone eliminated sugar from their diet, or 95% of it, let's say, how much longer do you think they could live without doing something stupid?
So
do you think it can extend your life if you eliminate sugar?
I think it can extend your health. So let's begin by talking about two things, lifespan and health span. All right. Now, there's a challenge here because while we're living longer, let's round up to 80, right? Most people are living the last 20 years of their life in some level of physical pain, cognitive loss, cardiovascular loss, inflammation, all these things. So their health span, they're healthy up until, 60, and then it's a decrease from there. And you have to realize that you're trading these things all the time. And so if you want to have, my goal for myself and for those I love is to live a life where I've got the vitality, the energy, the cognition, looking good, feeling good, moving well, from now through 100. And then during these next, I'm 63 today, right? Over these next 37 years, we're going to have so many breakthroughs coming, right? Science doesn't stand still. We forget that it's moving at this exponential speed. And my job is to keep myself in the best health I can to intercept the breakthroughs that are coming that will give you the next decade, How much do you lean into on the spiritual side of your health and life? Because there's so much science and AI and tech and biohacking and doing everything perfectly in terms of the right foods, the right sleep, the right supplements. Where does spirituality and the divinity of life come in the future of your health and your lifespan? So, most people know me as a technologist in AI or biotech or space rockets, where I spent my first years. But the last decade, I have been truly focused on longevity as one of the largest markets. I have a $600 million venture fund in that area, and I've written a few books, started a number of companies. We'll talk about perhaps Fountain Life. A few years ago, I was on stage at the Vatican, to bring it back to spirituality. And so it sounds like a joke, but I'm on stage in the Vatican with a alderman, a rabbi, a cardinal, myself, and we're having the title of the panel was The Morality of Immortality. Interesting, right?
Very.
And I flipped it to the immorality of mortality. And so that was our conversation. And the rabbi there gave this amazing historical overview of human lifespan. And he said, yes, we had Methuselah and all of these people living to 700, 800, 900 years. And then something happened where humans sinned irreparably with God, and God said, you shall have no more than 120 years. And this is in the Bible.
Really?
And what's amazing is up until now, the longest lived human is 122 years old.
Wow.
And we have people, typically these super centenarians who are making it from 110 to 120. And so it's interesting that the Bible actually called out 120 years. I find that pretty extraordinary.
Why do you think that is?
Maybe that was their experience back then. Maybe
no one
they're
lived past
prophetic.
that. Yeah,
Who knows? I don't know. But I remember saying, okay, listen, if we're promised by the Bible 120 years, I'm fine taking that 120
Give me
years.
that 120, yeah.
And then we'll renegotiate after that. So, listen, spirituality, I'm going to take it slightly different and talk about mindset, all right? Because you love mindset, I love mindset. I love the work that you do, and when I listen to your show, it's around mindsets. Yes. And as it turns out, mindset, which is connected to spirituality, yes, is one of the most powerful forces in you living a healthy, long life. It truly is. And here's the numbers. There was a study done and reported, actually, I've got it here, reported the National Academy of Sciences, right? The Journal of Proceedings of the National Academy of Sciences, like one of the most prestigious journals. And it said, in a study of 69,744 women and 1,429 men, it's one of the only studies that had more women than men, published in the National Academy of Sciences, it was found that optimistic people lived as much as 15% longer than pessimists.
Isn't that interesting?
I find that fascinating. And I do think that is true. I think that is about our mindset, our belief of mind over matter. And so, people tell me you're optimistic. I go, yeah, I got a double benefit from being optimistic.
Sure.
I love life. I love every minute of it.
I'm trying to remember the researcher, I think it was Dr. Ellen Langer, I think, who did a study. Hopefully I'm not making this up on the person, but I think she did a study where she had people go back into the nostalgia of their life, like back to the 60s or the 50s, and they lived in a home with the music from the 50s, the music from the 60s, the artwork from that time, like the food, all of it was like the clothes. They wore the clothes from that decade of their teen years.
Yeah.
And they started to see themselves get healthier, start to heal certain things, have more energy, and almost reverse time by living back in time. So into a more positive, optimistic, youthful life.
Let me, one of the things I opened the book with that I want people to realize, there's a couple of things, if I could lay these down as cornerstones. The first is you're born with 3.2 billion letters from your mom and 3.2 billion letters from your dad. And that's your software you're running. You're running it at age 0, at age 20, at age 50, 80, hopefully at 100. And so if you're running the same software, why do you look different, right? Why don't you have a six-pack at 100 that you had when you were 18? And it turns out it's not the genes you have, all right? We have some 20 to 22,000 genes inside of that genome. It's what genes are on, what genes are off. That is your epigenome. It's epi from the Greek word for above, and it's controlling which genes are on and off as you age. And the control of those genes do two things. It says, okay, we're going to turn these genes on in your skin cell, these genes on in your neuron, these genes on in your hepatocyte, your liver cell. And so cell type is controlled. But also, as we grow older, these genes, some get turned on that shouldn't be on, some get turned off that shouldn't be off, and that is aging. And what's been proven in the last, I say this is work done over the last 5 years, is that we can reverse your epigenetic age.
Your biological age.
Well, yeah, you can call it your biological age. Very specifically, I'm saying the epigenome, like your genes are the keys on a piano, right? All those genes are there. And when you're playing a song, you're playing certain genes. And as you get older, the song starts to blur and the wrong keys are being hit and such, and that's your epigenome. And can you reverse it back where the song being played is correct? And a number of things impact our epigenome. It is your mindset, definitively mind over body. It is your environment. It is very much exercise. It's sugar. It's what you eat. It's sleep. And so when people talk about reversing their age, right, and this is something I've been focused on doing for myself, there are a number of things that can reverse your age to a younger epigenetic age. And those are the things I talk about in the book. It is exercise, sleep, diet, the supplements and meds you take, your mindset, your habits. People talk about, it sounds really expensive to take care of yourself. It's not economically expensive. There are some things that are expensive for sure. But, one thing I want everyone to take away from this conversation today is here are a number of things you can do effectively for free that can make a big difference. But you're not going to do them unless you're motivated, right? It's all about that motivation. And the motivation here should be, if I can keep myself in reasonably good health for the next decade, there's this massive benefit that's going to be paid out. And so I don't want to be the last person to die before you reach longevity escape.
Yeah, right. I mean, you had a lot of great people review this book. Dr. Mark Hyman was just on the show recently, and I think he said, I can't remember the stats, but I believe it's over 50% at least of Americans are more obese than less obesity, right? There's more obesity than ever before. And I'm curious, you talk about mindset, environment, exercise, sugar, what you eat, and sleep are kind of the key tenets within this book. But if someone doesn't have the mindset that they want to get out of suffering or pain, or they want to get out of obesity, or they want to get out of the chronic illness that they have, because it's just too hard for them to think otherwise, or it's too much inertia
they don't
to
have
switch.
the role models,
whatever.
They're not in the wrong environment.
Everything. It seems like so many different things that you need to pay attention to and stop doing. When a lot of people just feel sick, tired, a lack of energy, exhausted from work, in relationships that aren't really serving them, and they just don't have all these put together. How do you get to the mindset first to say, I've tried these things before, it didn't work. I tried to eat better, it didn't work. I tried to sleep better, it didn't work. I tried the medicine, and I'm just getting bigger. I'm getting more chronic fatigue.
Get it. And
how do I switch
there
that mindset?
has to be a why, right?
How does someone find that why?
So when I talk about this with my abundance community, my Fountain Life members, I'm saying, okay, listen, in your mind, there is a number. Each of us have a number of how long I'm going to live. Like it or not, you've got a number, right? And that number comes from someplace. It comes from, your parents, your grandparents, the Bible, society, what you heard on CNN or whatever. And you're tracking towards that number. I remember when I taught my nieces how to ride a bike, we were on a tennis court that didn't have a net. And there were 2 poles in the court, right? And they kept on hitting the poles. And I'm like, what's going on here? It's like, you have to tie a tennis court.
Go around it,
It's because that's where they were looking. That's where they were focusing. And so if you got a number that says my dad made it to 80, 85. I hope I can make it there. Or the oldest person in my family was 75, so I hope I can make it there. You're going to hit that number. And so you need to let go of that and get a new number.
This is interesting because I haven't heard it this way. And the way you're saying it right now, and I think this is really something that people need to fully pay attention to what you're saying, because you're reframing, creating a number in your mind so that you can see how am I going to extend it. Because if our father or grandfather died at a certain age, like you're saying, we're automatically or unconsciously saying, well, maybe I last a few years longer because I'm doing things a little differently. Maybe.
My medicines may be better.
Right, exactly. But you're saying we need to think of a new number.
You do. So we have to look at...
What if it seems unrealistic? Oh, my grandfather, my dad was 80-something or 85.
You know what? So let me provide context here. The average human lifespan for most of human existence, for Homo sapiens, is 30.
Wow.
Right? So you and I'd be dead a while ago.
Right.
So to frame this, and I talk about this, and I'm trying to provide the construct, mental construct, to change people's belief about what's possible for them, which is the number one thing to do, because if you believe it's different, you're then going to take these next steps, which make these things different for you. So number one, 100,000, 200,000 years ago, before birth control, right, you were pregnant at age 12 or 13.
Wow.
And just was the case. And puberty has moved later over these last few 100,000 years. Number two, by the time you were 26, 27, 28, you were a grandparent.
Wow.
Amazing. And before food was abundant, before we had McDonald's and Whole Foods, it was scarce. And the worst thing you could do if you wanted to perpetuate your species was stay alive and steal food from your grandchildren's mouths. So you would die.
Wow.
Right? So this evolutionary context is important here. And if you look at the human body, we peak in functional biological age at around 27, and it's a slow decrease. What does that mean? It means our immune system begins to decrease in its power. We become immuno-exhausted. Our muscle mass comes down. We have sarcopenia, right? So last year, I went heads down to add 10 pounds of muscle mass, all right? And working out every day, making it. Now my job is, okay, I got what I wanted. Now it's to maintain it. And I think about that a lot.
Wow.
All right, and I measure it, and we can talk about that, and you're doing amazing. I mean, how often do you work out?
4 or 5 days a week, depending. Yeah, but I'm also doing, sauna for 20, 30 minutes, 3-4 times a week.
Yes.
I'm doing, all the different things that I can do.
And you look amazing.
Thank you.
And these are creating habits in your life. Mm-hmm. Okay, so first context here, evolutionarily, is it's downhill after, call it 30. Your hormones, your
metabolism,
system, everything is dropping because there was never any reason to maintain it. You were dead. Second thing, so understanding that is important, that you've got to say, I refuse to let that be the case, and I'm going to do everything I can to change it. But you need some motivational hooks going forward. What's that? First of all, should realize that there are species of whales on Earth, the bowhead whale, that can live for 200 years.
That's crazy.
It's amazing, right?
How do they track that? I mean, how do they even know that they're 200 years old? That's crazy.
Have found,
how do they know they're 200 years old? I mean,
they have found whales with harpoons in them and been able to carbon date.
Come on.
Yes.
That is fascinating.
Isn't that amazing? Yeah. And then Greenland sharks can live to 500 years old and have babies at 200 years old.
That's nuts.
Yeah, it is crazy.
But we're humans. We're not whales.
We're not whales. We're not sharks. But the point I'm saying is that these large mammals, in case can live that long. There's a proof case. The second thing to realize is there are people who live routinely in good neurocognitive and cardiovascular health and metabolic health till over 100. They're sharp, they're at work, they're capable, they're motivated.
You pull up still, all that stuff, yeah.
And why can they and why can't others? There's a reason. It's not random, all right? And so we're beginning to discover that. We're beginning to discover what's the underlying metabolic, genetic, all of those things. And we now have the tools to edit those things and change them. I think that's the important, if we understand why something exists and then how to transform what you've been given to match that, we can begin to see an extension of health span.
What was your mindset like when you were in your 40s or mid-40s? When most people hit a midlife crisis, where were you mentally, emotionally around life and death?
I never thought about, I said, listen, I went to medical school. I was at MIT as an undergrad studying molecular biology. And then I went to Harvard for medical school to make my parents happy.
Right.
I had promised them I would do this. But then my fourth year of medical school, I had two companies that I was running, a rocket company and a space university. And I thought about longevity to some degree, but it was not my driver. And I was focused on space. And I was focused on opening the space frontier. And then I was focused on, through the X Prize and Singularity University, focused on solving grand challenges. And it was really the last decade that I'm like, oh my God, the biggest grand challenge is, can we extend the healthy human lifespan, right? The greatest wealth is your health. I love the saying, the man or woman who has their health has 1,000 dreams. The man or woman who does not has but one.
Yes.
And it's so true. And so I started saying, oh my God, I love impact. I love, how can I change lives? How can I support and uplift? And helping people see this future, see what is possible for them, for me is my goal. And in this book—
Did you ever fear of death though?
So I lost my fear of death doing DMT, dimethyltryptophan, right, which is the active ingredients in ayahuasca. And I don't want to go down that journey too much.
How old were you?
This was 7-8 years ago.
Okay.
But it was it's a dissolution of the ego and a connection with a universe of love and God at its most epic proportion. And it was extremely powerful for me. And I lost that fear of death. One of my motivations in longevity is my why. All right. And so coming back to this, it's like to get people to put in the work to live a longer, healthier life. You've got to have a reason for it. And when I work with my Abundance 360 community, my Fountain community, I'm like, okay, let's discuss this. If you had 10 healthy years, what would you do with it? If you had 20 healthy additional years, what would you do with it? When I ask people if you had 50 additional years, their mind breaks. It's like you can make up stuff for 10 or 20 years, but 50 years? Like, it becomes really hard for people to think that far out. And I find that fascinating. But if you've got a why, and one of my whys was, I've been a space cadet since I was born in 61, Apollo lands on the moon in 69, Star Trek comes out in 67, all those things influenced my life. And it's like, we're on the verge of humanity becoming a multiplanetary species. We're just talking about the SpaceX launch, we're going to the moon on a recurring basis. We're going to go to Mars. It's amazing. It's like the kid in the candy store here is like, I want to see as much of that as I can. Right? So one of my whys is to be here alive, to see humanity become a multiplanetary species, to be part of that. I want to set up the first town on the moon. I want to mine asteroids. I mean, crazy, right? But at the end of the day, this is the future we have potential for, and you can dream big if you've got those extra decades.
If you don't think that you had a positive mindset, you were pessimistic, and you didn't have a why for a greater future, how old do you think you'd be able to get to?
I don't know. I think I would sort of be tracking into my 80s.
Really?
Yeah.
So you think you can extend 40 years based on positive mindset, a greater vision of the future?
Oh, yeah, and then doing the work.
Of course.
The work.
But without the mind, I feel like the mindset and the vision for why is actually everything first.
It is.
And it makes it easier to do the work, because if you did all the work and you were negative, it's going to counteract itself.
You have to believe this is possible, right? Yes. One of the reasons I wrote this Longevity Guidebook was to give people an understanding that what's possible. And then you need to have the mindset of like, so for me, opening the space frontier, I have two 13-year-old boys. I had my kids when I was 50. And that's I think one of the great longevity therapeutics is having young kids. And I want to see them, I want to meet their kids and their grandkids. And there's lots of other whys that I've created for myself. But it has to do with, I think this is the most extraordinary time ever to be alive. And I want to see as much of that as I can and live in that future. So that why is important. When it's 6 or 7 a.m. in the morning and it's comfy in bed and you're a little bit groggy and you would set yourself up to go to the gym. Do you work out in the morning?
Yeah. It's hard to do at night.
Yeah, it is. But, the why of getting out of bed to go and work out needs to be there.
Yes.
Right? I mean, if you're 25 and you're dating, your why might be procreation or landing
which is fun. Yeah.
Landing that partner. But then when you're at night, you're at a restaurant, you've got this basket of bread in front of you.
It's hard.
And this glass of wine brought out before any of your food lands. And you start, chomping down on that and spiking your blood sugar. Or at the end of dinner, when this dessert comes and lays in front of you and it's sitting there staring at you, saying no, you need a why. You need a why, and you need habits that are going to serve you. And you know this. So that is part of this.
I think this is interesting. I think I've had a lot of these, a lot of the people in the back of your book, all the doctors, researchers, scientists on biohacking and health and longevity. I've had a lot of individuals on the show and heard a lot of information. But I think what a lot of them are missing that you talk about so brilliantly is kind of a basic thing, which is mindset around like a positive future.
Yeah.
Because most people just think, okay, what's the supplements? I know I need to sleep 8 hours a night. And if I don't, there's no coming back from sleep debt. You can't overcome it. And you're creating chronic illness and disease when you sleep less than 6 hours a night consistently. If you're eating sugar, you're going to be obese, and it's inflammation, all these different things. Yeah. And so I hear all that, right? I hear all that. How do you create the sleep sanctuary, exercise, resistance training, no sugar, environment, all these different things. You hear it all, which you have all this backed by science as well in the book. But I think what you talk about differently than most people is just a positive belief. And most people don't believe in themselves. They live in self-doubt on accomplishing anything in their life.
Yeah.
How do I get this job? How do I earn more money? How do I get out of a toxic relationship? How do I find a partner who's good for me? They lack the self-worth that it's possible to accomplish a lot of things, let alone a belief that they can live to 100 or 120. It just seems so hard to comprehend mentally and emotionally. And what I think you're talking about that's different than everyone else is, first, you need the belief that it's possible. You need to see other case studies or scenarios of people living a certain way.
Yeah.
And you need to have a why that's attached to beliefs. And I think the third thing is we need to believe that we are worthy of living that long. Because most people don't believe they're worthy of existing now.
Wow.
That's what I think is different about this. Because a lot of people lack self-worth. And if we lack the self-worth, we do things to cause harm.
Yeah.
The more harm compounds, the less life we live. Emotionally, spiritually, but also physically. And I think that's where a lot of this comes from. You have of course, you've got, $500 million funds every 2 years to move humanity forward. So you're just so expansive in your thinking because you've got to deploy this money to build a greater future, and then you got to live into it in 60 years.
Yeah.
Most people don't think that positively, that they're worthy and deserving of existing now. Yeah. They're depressed, anxious, overwhelmed, stressed, living in chaos, let alone how can I think beyond next week because I can't survive today.
So one of the things I talk about in the mindset chapter here, right? And there's a chapter on mindset and the hormones of happiness. Is that our brains, we're all hearing about large language models and neural nets and AI all the time. Our brains are neural nets, right? We have 100 billion neurons, 100 trillion synaptic connections that shapes everything you do, see, feel, hear. All of that is upstairs in your 3-pound mass of jelly. And our minds and our mindset is being crafted and shaped every day. The way that Google and OpenAI and Anthropic and XAI, how these companies shape their large language models is by showing them data, and they're collecting. So if you want to train a neural net how to recognize a cat, you show it photo of a cat after a cat after a cat, and it finally learns furry, pointy ears, whiskers, tail. But at the end of the day, if you show it a dog, it's never seen a dog before, it's going to say it's a cat, right? So the question is, how are we training our neural nets? And we train our neural nets, our mindset about what we believe is possible for us in the world, in our happiness, in our longevity, by virtue of who you hang out with, right? What you listen to. Congratulations on listening to this podcast. What you read, right? What's on your walls. All of these things shape how you think. And so if you're watching, the Crisis News Network, what I call CNN, every night, where you're getting every murderer, every crooked politician, into your living room, hour after hour after hour in living color, because their business model is to deliver your eyeballs to their advertisers. We pay 10 times more attention to negative news than positive news, right? It's just, so we're being just inundated by negative news. And if you're old and you're hanging out with people who are dying and reading the obituaries, you're just compounding this. And you're like, I must not have much time left because all my friends are dying.
We're also creating an immune system, your nervous system, to be heightened levels of anxiety.
You're fully sympathetic instead of parasympathetic.
Yes.
So these things are critically important and things that we can change. I mean, I talk about a few of these things, like in the chapter on diet, right? Few simple things that I want to share that people can implement right now. When you sit down at dinner tonight, take a few deep breaths, just in and out. That puts you instantly to what's called a parasympathetic. It's a rest and digest nervous system.
Before you eat.
Before you eat. It allows you to consume your nutrients a lot better. If you're eating in front of the television, watching the evening news, you're screwed. You're in a fight or flight, you don't absorb the nutrients, you're empty calories. Next thing, even the order in which you eat your foods matters. So if you have a plate of food, eat your veggies first. Those veggies slow down your digestive tract. They are absorbing the best nutrients first. Eat your protein next. And then if you have room, at the end, you can eat your carbs, right? So that order is critically important.
Is that the sequence secret?
Yeah, the sequence secret. Right?
And I think this is the interesting part that, I want people to know this because there's kind of 5 parts of this.
Please, go ahead.
And this is, you talk about how to build your GLP-1 naturally. And you also say that this secret could actually boost post-meal GLP-1 levels by 38%. And that's kind of the Ozempic drug is known for having GLP-1 levels.
So Ozempic drugs are they're every place. They're the get rich quick scheme or the get skinny quick scheme. And people need to know it's not that simple, right? GLP-1 drugs, you do lose weight. You basically cut out your hunger, but a significant amount of the weight that you lose is muscle. And if there's one thing that correlates with longevity, it's your muscle mass.
Yes.
Right? So there's a very large study that the more muscle mass you have, the longer you're likely to live. And for a number of reasons that occur there. And so what happens is if you're on a GLP-1 drug, you're losing weight, you're losing fat and muscle. And then if you stop the drug, you'll put on 70% of the weight you lost. And most of that you put on is fat and not muscle.
Oh man, so you're kind of a victim to the drug forever.
You're effectively addicted.
Wow.
And so if you're going to take the drug, the single most important thing that you should be thinking about is, how do I use this to create better habits? I mean, there's some people who are morbidly obese.
They can't move well.
And yes, it's fantastic to help them. But the important thing is, while you're in the situation, learn how to eat healthy. I think about everything I put into my mouth in the same way that I'm so careful about what I watch I don't watch the news, first of all. I don't read the papers. I don't watch the news. I have Google searches and an AI that I set up
inform you and
that bring in the stuff that's relevant to me. I don't need some editor like working up my sympathetic system and telling me, I mean, pick up the newspaper tomorrow morning and count the number of negative stories and positive stories. I guarantee you it's 10 to 1, at least. And the same thing on the TV news. I mean, it's all negative news. And you have to ask yourself the question, is this all that's going on in the world? Or is that what they're reporting to me? And there's so much amazing things going on. You just don't hear about them. Good news networks do not succeed. And so you have to actively shape what you allow into your mind in the same way that you shape what you let into your body, what you eat.
And so there's a way to increase this GLP-1 naturally after you eat, right? And the first thing you talk about is a sequence secret, which is how you eat: fiber, protein, then carbs.
Yes.
That sequence first.
Yeah.
And I think it's interesting you say that. I think we've lost the ability to sit down without the TV on. Most people have lost this ability to sit down without phone or TV consumption and actually take a deep breath. You know, growing up, my dad used to do a prayer before.
Yes, exactly.
And we'd sit there and hold hands.
Yes, exactly.
And we'd actually connect with each other.
And do gratitude.
And
or
do gratitude.
Prayer.
And then now we eat. So even if you're rushing around, we sit and we take 30 seconds.
Calm your nervous system down.
Then we eat, not just stuff it in really quick, which I've been, tend to do a lot. So my fiance, Martha's always, we put the food down and she will energetically pray over the food and say, thank you so much, and put good energy into the food with her hands hovering over it. And it's just a moment, it may feel unnatural because you're like, I'm hungry, I want to eat this now.
Yeah.
But that little habit change will add to the sequence secret of helping you boost that metabolism faster, increase that GLP-1 faster with these little tweaks.
Chewing your food.
Yes.
I mean, listen, I'm guilty as everybody when I'm like in the middle of, it's like, I got to get this into my body as quickly as possible.
Yes.
But the answer is no. It's like when you do that, you're shortchanging the nutrients you're absorbing and you're doing yourself a massive disservice.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
And so if you're going to take the time to eat, and believe me, you have to get into a mantra mode where it's like, I'm going to eat now. One other thing,
pause.
I'm going to pause. I'm going to take some deep breaths. I'm going to drink a full glass of water.
First.
We all know this, right? Just to calm down my hunger pangs. And I'm going to enjoy every bite. And I'm going to chew it, a dozen times, 20 times. And I'm going to savor the food. And all of these things are basically activating your natural equivalent of Ozempic in your body.
Yes. You talk about yerba mate magic. How powerful is yerba mate over like a coffee or some other?
Well, I think I've got a chart there, which
it's page 37 for you.
Yeah.
This is 200 milligrams of, I don't know how you say this, uramine.
Yes.
Tested against a placebo. So this is with yerba mate versus a placebo.
The elements here are. Each of them make sense, right? The last one here, move your body, so regular exercise. I mean, we know this when the healthiest things you can do, especially as a family with your loved ones, with your kids, with your spouse, is after an evening meal, go take a walk. Mm-hmm. All of these things make a fundamental difference. You can actually see yourself lose kilograms just by the order in which you eat your foods.
Really?
Yeah.
So you eat the same amount of calories,
yeah.
same amount
first
of
of all,
food.
because you're slowing down your eating, and because you're eating your fiber first and your protein next and not your carbs. So the challenge is when you eat empty carbs, white rice, right, for example, it's converted to glucose. It spikes, or bread at the beginning of your meal. You know, you got this basket of bread, you're just munching and drinking wine. All of this turns into raising your blood glucose levels. That then spikes your insulin, which then makes you hungry again to eat more. So if you think that the restaurant is like just doing you this favor of bringing you out
free
the wine
bread,
and bread, no, they're manipulating you.
Wow.
They're just making you hungry to order more food. You know, I hate to say that, but that's what's going on.
I mean, it's a smart business move, I guess, if you're a restaurant. Not only get more sales.
They give you a little heroin dose at the beginning to get you addicted.
Exactly. What is this lemon power? What does that mean?
So there is an extract called aramin, and you have these what's called L cells in your gut that are producing the GLP-1, and it's basically stimulating your L cells to produce the same drug normally, and instead of giving yourself an injection of the stuff. So I mean, listen, these are all, at the end of the day, these are all small actions you can take.
Yes.
But it's how do you make these things into habits?
That's what you need. Because if you have to think about it all the time, it's going to be exhausting.
If you're thinking about it all the time, and I have added a chapter in this book, the last chapter I wrote is on routines. And routines are basically a mechanism that gets rid of your ability to negotiate with yourself. I mean, I think of that.
How do you do that, though?
By
it's like
small steps.
Yeah.
Small steps. Don't try and do everything at once. I lay out in the book all the routines I built. I lay out in the book routines from other individuals as well. And you can Google a lot of amazing health experts and look at their routines. But, you know, give yourself the gift of deciding what you consider healthy for yourself and take it in small incremental steps. And if you do that, after a while, you know, when I get out of bed, I set my alarm as a backup. I typically, you know, this morning I woke up at 5:15. I'm up between like 5:15 and 5:30 because I go to sleep by 9:30 the night before. It's like, for me, everything begins by me, you know, turning down the lights at 9, going into getting ready for sleep, putting on my blue light blocking glasses, slowing things down. I listen to a Audible book on tape as sort of like, it's like being read a bedtime story at night as an adult.
It kind of puts you to sleep?
Well, yeah. It's like I set a 15-minute timer and I go, some people like reading, some people like a hot bath, some people are, you know, focused on prayer, but there are certain triggers that you can have that get you from wide awake to slowing down and getting ready for sleep. We can talk about turn down room temperature and a bunch of other things. But when I'm up in the morning, that first hour and a half is mine, right? And it's when I have maximum control of my day. Is that the same for you?
Sure, yeah. Well, I just need to go to the gym right away.
Yeah, so I have different days that I'll do different things, but every day it's, you know, some red light meditation. I use something called a pulsetto, which is a vagal nerve stimulator to basically put me into parasympathetic. And all of these things have become routine for me. I just bought a home sauna, which I'm excited to start using.
Nice.
I know, it's great. So these are the routines that you do that feel natural. And if you don't have the routines, you find yourself in a position of renegotiating things with yourself. And a routine becomes a habit, which is the mechanism by which you don't negotiate with yourself. It's what I do. It's who I am.
It becomes identity.
It becomes identity. Yeah.
What is the thing you still get to unlock within yourself that you're still holding on to? Is there anything that you're holding on to that's a negative identity or something that's still a crutch that's the hardest thing for you to break through on? A routine, a habit, a non-negotiable?
That a routine that I want to have?
Or something that's still holding you back from like, I still eat that, ice cream once a week.
Yeah,
whatever.
And by the way, if you're dictatorial on it and you don't give yourself the ability to forgive yourself for eating something that, I just couldn't help, that's not healthy either.
Yeah.
Right.
Too rigidity is not
Yeah.
good.
I mean, it's like, give yourself credit for what you're able to do. And one of the other things, by the way, I'll come back to your question in a moment, is be careful at night. I mean, night is when things break down, right? You have a certain amount of willpower.
Yeah.
And you know this, right? You have your greatest willpower in the morning, and as you've had an exhausting day, I've battled, oh my God, I deserve that piece of cake. Damn it, I worked hard today. I think I want more meditative time in my life. And I need more stretching time in my life. So those two things are probably, if I had to move the needle, I have to let go of something else. There is one thing that all humans have in common, all humans, everywhere, from Elon Musk to the poorest child, it's 24 hours a day, 7 days in a week, 365 in a year. It's how we use our time that is everything.
And you've got to give something else up to add something to that time. Yeah. So meditation and stretching.
Yeah.
In page 50 of your book, you say there's a direct relationship between how well you sleep and how long you live.
Yeah.
So it's not about the length of sleep, it's also the quality of sleep, it sounds like.
It is.
Not being interrupted throughout the night.
Yeah, so I use an Aura ring to gamify my sleep. I have an 8 sleep mattress.
How helpful is that?
It is, because I think one of the things that lets me sleep through the night is having a mattress that cools me down.
I need that.
And I can shape the temperature curve through the night, and it warms up in the morning.
To wake you up?
To wake me up. I've just added a set of full spectrum lights that as the sun sets, the lights become, you see the sun setting and getting red. And then in the morning, the lights come on in a blue, and so this is about controlling your cortisol levels and just getting you started for the day. And so these are things that you can do. I mean, you have to remember, all of this got programmed 200,000 years ago. We didn't we lived outside.
We were in nature.
We were in nature. We're grounded, feet on the ground. We woke up when the sun came up, went to sleep when the sun went down. And
you also only lived 30 years.
You also lived 30 years. But it was predation, and it was infection, and it was a whole slew of other things.
How much does emotional trauma hold us back from living longer?
I don't have an answer for you. I think you'd be better off answering that. I think
kind of these stored traumatic wounds from our past, like if we're holding on to these traumatic events and reliving them.
Yeah, I think, you have to be loving life to want to live, right? So I love life. I truly love life. I love the world I'm living in, my family, the things I get to do. And that gives me this joy and this desire to live as long as I can. And I'm driven by making a difference, right? It's my massive transformative purpose is to inspire and guide entrepreneurs to create a hopeful, compelling, and abundant future for humanity.
Yeah.
And so that's what I love doing. And, in a very similar way to what you do, it's how do I inspire people to go big, to create a life they love living. And I think trauma is very real and needs to be addressed. And there are ways to address it now more than ever before.
Yeah.
But you have to feel worthy. You have to have a life. A friend, Dan Sullivan, says, you need to see a life, a future that's bigger than your past.
Yes.
Right? I mean, just think about that 1 second. If your future is bigger than your past, then I'm like, I have so much to live for.
Yes.
If you think like, oh my God, my best days were behind me, it's a slow, landing into the grave, you're
What's
dead
the
already.
point?
You're dead already.
Might as well live it up right now and
exactly.
eat everything and drink everything.
I'll get the tequila going.
Yeah.
Hit the parties.
I heard you, exactly. I've heard you once say that you take 75 supplements and pills a day to support your health and optimization for longevity. Yeah. We don't need to go into all of those, but if you were only allowed to take 5 supplements a day, so what would those be?
Yeah. So I'm not going to answer that.
Okay.
Let's start with that. This book began as a document. People would ask me like, what do you do? Always, right? So it's like, Peter, you look great. You're doing great, whatever. What do you do for your sleep? What do you do for your meds and your supplements? And this started as a 10-page document. It then became a 100-page longevity document. And it's become now, I think, 180 pages. I made it so that it was very readable and usable. And there's the longest chapter in here is a chapter on meds and supplements. Not because I think that's the most important thing that you should be doing, but because I wanted to disclose fully what I'm doing and why. So to back up 1 second, years ago, about 20 years ago or so, I think it was 20, there was a paper written called The Hallmarks of Aging. And a group of scientists identified, okay, what are the 9 things that are causing aging, like stem cell exhaustion and epigenetic changes and whole telomere shortening. And so they wrote up these 9 things. It was updated now to a dozen things. And so these are what we believe cause aging. And I went through with my physicians. I employ like 20 physicians at Fountain Life. I have one who's amazing, Mona Izat Villanov, who's my personal doctor, and then there's a team behind that as part of my Fountain Life membership. But I went through and I checked my bloods every quarter, sometimes more frequently than that. And I built a protocol of what I take. And I actually have 5 different pill packs. One when I wake up in the morning.
Gosh.
One in the AM with my breakfast, one at lunch, one in dinner, and one before I go to sleep. Listen, I guarantee you, my mom says, Peter, you're insane. How do you know those things all don't interfere with each other and so forth? I go, Mom, you got a good point. And this is what I'm taking. So, right.
Sure.
So, but what I wrote up in the book was every one of those supplements or meds, what are they impacting on those hallmarks of aging? What are the things that, and how are they reversing it? We're going to be, sometime in the next 3 years, we're going to have the ability for an AI to take in your entire genome, to take in all of your upload data, all of the imaging data of your body, all the blood biochemistry of your body. And then it will ask you, okay, here's your input. What do you want to do? You want more energy, you want to live longer, you want more muscle. What's your goals? What are your top 3 goals? And then how many pills are you willing to take? Right? I'm willing to take 5 pills. I'm willing to take 75 pills. And then it will spit out an optimum supplement protocol for
Based on you.
Based on you.
Is that happening right now? Is that out there?
We're working on it at Fountain.
Wow.
And it's an area that I think is very, very doable. The data is being collected at large scale.
Wow.
But today, if you went to 3 different doctors and gave them your data and asked them what you should be taking, you get 3 completely different answers.
Oh, man.
Right? But there is an optimal set for you. The next decade, the biggest impact is going to be from access to AI as your extraordinary health partner. Right? I mean, I can't explain how exciting it is to have this capacity and capability coming our way. So in the book, I lay out the meds, the supplements, and the why. And I think it's for everybody to evaluate for themselves.
Sure.
With your physician, right? and decide where are you in your journey. If you're 25, it's very different, right? So you might be taking creatinine to focus on building muscle.
Yes.
Right? If you're 85, you might be taking a particular supplement to reduce your cholesterol or your blood sugar. So I wrote it very much with a few provisos and like, okay, this is what I do. It's what I do. I test myself all the time. I've spoken to a dozen doctors. I've done the research, and this is why I do it. You decide. Do that for yourself.
What is something that people, if they have a little bit of extra money they want to invest in their health to understand their biomarkers better, what is the best tools out there to get an accurate understanding of your blood work or a DEXA scan? Like, what are the things that everyday people can do that don't have extreme amount of wealth to do the big tests?
Yeah, so...
or what should they be doing once a year at minimum?
Yeah, I think there are, one thing that I do is I'm wearing
Glucose monitor?
I'm wearing a continuous glucose monitor here, right here.
So you're always wearing that?
I'm always wearing it.
I still haven't gotten one of those yet. I keep hearing about it. I keep wanting to try it.
It's not expensive, right? You can get it from Dexcom or
Inside
Abbott Labs.
Tracker and all these things.
And those are different. Inside Tracker and LifeForce are companies that will do a quarterly blood test, right? So LifeForce, for example, Tony and I were co-founders of that. It will run you, a couple $100 a year, up to $500 a year, which is reasonably affordable. And it will give you your top 40 biomarkers, right? So at a minimum, give yourself the gift of that. Understand what's going on in your body. We're all optimists of around our health. And let me give something and there's a whole chapter in here called Not Dying from Something Stupid. And let me dive into that 1 second, if I might. Our bodies are incredibly good at hiding disease. If I asked you right now, or folks watching, are you sure there's nothing going on inside your body you need to know about? 100%. Are you positive? Most people truly have no idea unless you've gone through what I call an upload, right? You don't know what's going on inside your body. And here's some stats. 70% of heart attacks have no precedent. There's no chest clutching or no shortness of breath. Even if you got what was called a calcium score. Have you ever gotten a calcium score? Okay, a calcium score has been for a few decades the most popular cardiovascular test. It's looking at a CT of your heart, looking for calcium. But calcified plaque in your coronary arteries. The coronary arteries are the arteries that feed the muscle of the heart. If you block a coronary artery and it deprives the heart tissue from glucose and oxygen, the heart tissue dies and you have a heart attack. And if enough of it dies, you're dead.
Wow.
Right? So when people talk about a coronary disease or heart attacks, that's what we're talking about. We're talking about the blood vessels feeding the muscle of your heart being blocked. Now, if you get a calcium score, they range from like 0 to over 1,000. If your plaque, your cholesterol plaques and so forth are calcified, it's like, imagine a pipe here that's pumping the blood through. If it's calcified on the side of the arteries and not blocking the pipe, it's stable, it's fine. But what we've discovered is that there's a second kind of plaque. It's called soft plaque. And it doesn't show up in a calcium score. And so you can have a calcium score of 0 and have a heart attack that day. Because this soft plaque is in the wall of the artery. And what we see is it can evulse, it can break out, and a glob of fat will block the coronary artery and starve your muscle. And so what is brand new over the last 3 years is a new type of technology, which is an AI overlay that can find the soft plaque in your heart, in your coronary arteries. And if it identifies soft plaque, your job is to either reduce it or calcify it. And it's the only thing that matters. So there's a company called Clearly that we use that you do your coronary CT. It takes 10 minutes, and that data is uploaded. This AI model finds a soft plaque, gives you a report, and that's all you should care about. If it's blocking your coronary, then you might need, some type of emergent treatment. But if it's not, but you have a high soft plaque burden, your job is to reduce it or calcify it so it can't like sneak up to you in the middle of the night.
Right.
I had a fraternity brother of mine who died from a heart attack in the middle of the night, was due to come down to Fountain Life in a month.
Oh.
And I'm like, it's like, just slayed me, right? And
what are the tests that people get when they go to Fountain Life?
so let's break it up into three parts. There's imaging. So when you come through Fountain Life, it's a full body MRI.
Like a pre nouveau type of scan
Pre
or something.
nouveau type of stuff, and more. So it's a full body, a brain vasculature. So in the full body, we're looking for any kind of tumors, cancers, any kind of anomaly, any kind of nodules in the lung, looking for aneurysms. I'll mention this because it's public knowledge. A friend, Sam Nazarian, I don't know if you know Sam, he started SLS Hotels and one of the major hoteliers. And we have a partnership with Fountain and Sam. He's building out 25 resorts, 6-star resorts and residential. He's going to be building Fountain Lives into all of these around the world, which is amazing. So we're going to business. Say, Sam, come on down and go through Fountain Life. I was taking them to go see Richard Branson in Necker. And so we went through Orlando on the way down. He goes through it. Now, this guy is extremely successful and wealthy and has many doctors. He goes through, we find 2 brain aneurysms.
Wow.
He's in surgery a week later.
Holy cow.
And he's cured now. But this would have been super bad news. And it's like, that's insane that you have the best medical care and you didn't know this is going on inside your body. So the imaging finds cancers, tumors, and aneurysms. We do a Clearly coronary CT to look for soft plaque. We do a low-dose lung CT. We do a DEXA scan, which you're familiar with, which is looking at your visceral fat, your muscle tissue, your body fat, your bone density. We do retinal scan.
Wow.
We do skin scans looking for any kind of moles or any kind of early cancer. We have a brand new machine for women, which is a new type of breast scan, which is ultrasound. It does not, compress the breast. It works for people with breast implants or dense breasts. It's amazing ultrasound. It's a joy for women to use, and it's something that makes it a lot easier for them.
Wow.
So those are the imaging paradigms.
Blood work in the
We have then all of the blood work. It's 150 blood biomarkers that are tested. Your full microbiome, right? Looking at your gut. We do toxin testing. We do food allergy testing. There's a whole bunch more. Your full genome, not just SNPs, just not like 23andMe, which is single nucleotide polymorph. It's all 3.2 billion letters, and it's looking at it and understanding this. All the scanning, it takes about 4.5 hours. All the scanning is to answer 2 primary questions. What's going on inside your body you know about right now, and what's likely to happen to you so we can prevent it, we can optimize it, right? That's the goal.
Yeah.
In the what's going on right now, what's amazing are the numbers. We've had like 5,000, 6,000 people come through. 2% have a cancer they don't know about, right? It's like, hate to tell you this and happy to tell you this, we found it, let's do something about it. 2.5% have an aneurysm. 14.4% have either neurocognitive, cardiovascular, or metabolic disease you need to take care of right now. I was giving you the stats, 70% have a heart attack without any earlier. you don't feel a cancer until stage 3 or stage 4. And your probabilities of a full remission, surviving it, is much lower. It's like when you go into the hospital not feeling well and having a pain, and the doctor says, I'm sorry to tell you this. Guess what? It didn't happen that morning. It's been going on for, probably years. And you want to find it. When's the best time to find cancer? It's like at the very beginning.
Yes.
What's even more concerning is that 70% of the cancers that kill us are never tested for. So it's not the breast cancer, the prostate cancer, the colon cancer, right? We test for those. It's the glioblastoma, or it's pancreatic cancer. It's the things that are not routinely tested for, right? And so one other test we do is a Grail Gallery test, which is from a blood sample. We're able to look at 40 or 50 different cancers. So when cancer is growing, those cells are growing rapidly, and some rupture, and they release DNA into your bloodstream. So from what's called a liquid biopsy, we can determine if there's something that we should be looking for.
Wow.
But what is amazing about the Fountain Life experience is it's multimodal, meaning it's not any one thing, right? It's all the imaging, it's the genetics, it's the blood biomarkers, it's the cognitive testing, all of these things that come together. So, full disclosure, it's not cheap, right?
Right.
It's $19,500, but it's not just the testing. You get a medical team with you for the year.
Wow.
Right? So there's a functional medicine doctor, a longevity doctor, a nurse, a dietitian, a health coach that work with you through the year and then repeat test quarterly. So if you want to go deep into this, we are releasing in the start of the new year a version for $6,500, which is going through employers. So if a company buys 10 or more for their employees, the price comes down significantly.
Wow, that's cool.
Yeah.
So people can go to what, fountainlife.com?
Yeah, fountainlife.com for that. There's one other part, which is the part I'm most excited about.
Tell me.
Okay. So one part is knowing what's going on in your body and not dying from something stupid, like, holy, I wish I had found that earlier. The other part is this incredible world of longevity therapeutics. This is the stuff that will extend your lifespan, your health span. And so Fountain has created partnerships with companies that are in FDA trials right now with amazing technology.
Wow.
And so we're making it available to our members through these companies. Like, these are the options you have that can increase your muscle, reduce your immune age, reduce inflammation. And for me, that's the most important part, because I think, knowing what's going on in your body is step one, and then optimizing your body.
Yes.
Now, again, clearly, some of these things are expensive. Some of them are not. But the very first thing people need to do is the biggest needle is going to be moved by your sleep, your diet, your exercise, your mindset, right? Those will buy you a decade or two.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
So for those who are serious about it, I think Fountain Life, make sure you guys check that out. You've offered me like a year or two ago to go through it. I'm going to take you up on it at some point.
I still invite you to come.
I'm going to take you up on it at some point.
Bring your fiance.
I'll bring Martha. Yeah, we'll do it. And
our headquarters is in Orlando.
Okay.
We have centers in New York, Orlando, Naples, and Dallas, Texas. We're opening up in 25 here in LA.
Okay, maybe now's the time then.
Now's the time.
Now's the time. What does it take, like a day to do all the testing?
Yeah, under a day.
Okay, cool.
There's some work to do to get ready there.
Sure.
But then we're opening up in Houston as well, at the Ritz-Carlton in Arizona. So we're adding 4 new centers now, and then we have that roadmap of 25 centers.
Okay.
With Sam. So
it's amazing. Well, for those that are interested in that, go to fountainlife.com. If you don't have that type of money yet, there's a lot of free things that you can do right now, like you talked about. All of them in the Longevity Guidebook, how to slow, stop, and reverse aging and not die from something stupid. So make sure you guys get a copy or 2 and give it to a friend. It's got a whole chapter on happiness hormones and how you can increase your happiness hormones. Because again, most of this is about mindset and being in a gratitude, happiness state, because that's going to help you extend your life. Yeah, you got your list of supplements in here. You got everything in here on how to optimize it.
And also some of the incredible therapeutics that are coming. And to be excited about what's coming, to feel empowered, right? So this book, you can go buy it at Amazon. I think it's going to be $27 I'm giving it away at cost for me, which is like $15. If you go to longevityguidebook.com, that will give you access to a bunch of additional things, and the book is shipped at a lower price. My goal is get this out as far and wide. Any profits I make through Amazon or Audible, I'm donating to the X Prize. Let me just mention the X Prize last year because I think it's really important. So I started the X Prize Foundation 30 years ago, hard for you to believe.
Wow.
We've launched 30 X Prizes in 30 years. So what's an X Prize? It is a large pot of money that we say, I don't care who you are, where you went to school, what you've ever done. If you can build and demonstrate this technology, you win the money and the world gets the benefits, right? So our first X Prize was for private space flight, carry a person up to space, actually 3 people up, land, and within 2 weeks make the trip again.
Wow.
This is way before SpaceX and Blue Origin and all of those companies. And that was successful, but we've launched X Prizes on mapping the ocean floor, cleaning up oil spills on the ocean, pulling drinkable water out of the atmosphere. And I got Elon to fund a $100 million carbon extraction prize, pulling carbon out of the atmosphere and the oceans. A year ago, we launched one of our largest prizes ever. It was a $101 million prize for extending the healthy human lifespan. It's $101 million because Chip Wilson, the founder of Lululemon, who's one of our large sponsors, said, so how big is Elon's prize again? 100 million?
There, 1 more million,
Yeah, I said, fine, if you fund it, we'll make it 100 million. So we challenge teams to add 20 healthy years, right?
Wow.
Actually, to reverse your functional age. So we ask teams with a therapy lasting less than a year, I want you to demonstrate the ability to make my cognition 20 years younger, the clarity of my thought, my span of memory, my muscle abilities to grow muscle 20 years younger, and my immune system 20 years younger. So we have 460 teams in that competition right now. This prize will be won by 2030. And again, and I talked about it a little bit in the book, but this is about, I want people to realize this stuff is coming. It's a rocket ship. There's no bigger business on the planet and no greater motivation for people. So I want folks to know this is coming. Be excited about it. Be hopeful. Share it with your parents, your grandparents.
This is powerful. I've got one final question for you, but I want people to get the book, Longevity Guidebook. Make sure you guys check it out. Share this with a friend. Let's say I believe you're going to make it to 120 if you believe it to be true.
Yeah.
With everything that's coming. Let's say you are 120.
Yes.
And maybe you get to extend it a few more years.
Yeah.
Let's say you made 120. What's the thing you'll be most proud of looking back at 63 right now that you did for yourself to get to 120?
The thing I'm the most proud of is hopefully, and I believe, my kids, right? I mean, that's always something. It's amazing when I go to sleep at night and I think about what are the 3 moments that I'm most grateful for from the day, it always comes back to them, right? It's like all the deals, nice, but it's all about my kids saying, I love you, right? It's amazing in that regard. I think this X Prize is a big deal. This X Prize is giving scientists and entrepreneurs permission to dream bigger than ever before. It's funded out of Saudi Arabia, out of Revolution, and Chip Wilson. I'm a multi-million-dollar donor to the prize as well, as are a number of amazing members of my abundance community. I think the biggest thing, ultimately, it goes back to where we began. I think it's helping people change their mindset, because that's the first step. It really, truly is. Everything follows from a belief that you can. and a belief that you should, and a belief that you deserve it. Because the tools are going to be there. And it's not that hard. I mean, I lay them out in the book. You don't have to do everything. You pick a few things and increase, next month add a few more things and add a few more things. But if you don't believe it, if you don't believe you're worthy, like you said, you don't go past go.
Peter, thanks for being here, man.
A pleasure, buddy.
Appreciate it.
Always a pleasure.
Powerful.
Every single one of these plants has unique properties that are number one, going to affect our microbiome, right? So these microbes, they're kind of like us in many ways, Lewis. They have personalities. Some of them are not nice. They have cliques. They have certain ones that they tend to hang out with.